I turned 80 a few years ago, and for most of my life, I believed that a little indulgence here and there couldn't hurt me. Growing up, red meat was a staple on our family table. Juicy steaks, hearty burgers, and thick cuts of roast were part of my daily life. I thought, it's protein, so it must be good for me. My doctors never gave me a strong warning against it, and I never felt anything too concerning until my early 70s, when strange, nagging pains began creeping into my joints and gut. At first, I wrote it off as ordinary aging, but something kept telling me there might be more beneath the surface. I remember my granddaughter visiting me one weekend and noticing how I was moving more slowly than usual. "Grandpa," she said, gently touching my elbow, "are you hurting?" Her concern was sweet, but it also alarmed me. It was then I realized I had to pay closer attention to what my body was trying to say. The older we get, the more we're told that our aches and pains are simply part of life. We accept them as normal, especially if we've lived a relatively healthy life otherwise. Yet behind that acceptance often lurks a fear of what might happen if our health declines any further. For me, that fear manifested in the possibility of losing my independence. I was terrified of the day I might not be able to drive myself to the grocery store or walk up a flight of stairs without assistance. If you're in your mid-60s or beyond, you know exactly how precious it is to stay active and self-reliant. The last thing we want is to become a burden on our family members or even lose the ability to travel, socialize, or handle simple daily tasks. When those warnings about diet started to appear in news reports, I realized I was ignoring something that could accelerate the loss of mobility I cherished. I decided to research everything I could about red meat and its long-term effects on senior health. What I discovered shook me enough to make a radical change. I gave it up almost completely. Now, I know that sounds extreme. After all, many of us have enjoyed a good steak or juicy burger for decades. But as I read study after study and talked with more health-minded friends, I came to believe that continuing my old eating habits could magnify serious health threats that lurk just around the corner for folks in our later years. One day after a nagging gut issue flared up again, I said, enough. Since then, my energy levels have risen, my joint discomfort has lessened, and my doctor even raised an eyebrow at how my numbers improved. It was one of those rare moments you realize a single change can ripple through your whole life. I invite you to stick around because I'm about to share 5 lessons I learned on this journey. By the end, you'll not only understand why I chose to give up red meat at 80, but you'll also learn how you can use these insights to protect your health and maybe even reverse issues you thought were irreversible. The last lesson is especially surprising because it goes completely against what most of us were told for decades. It's a twist that could transform how you view aging and diet forever. I'm not speaking just from my own experience either. There's a growing conversation among doctors and specialists. Some of them are starting to question traditional dietary advice, especially when it comes to seniors. I encourage you to stay with me to the very end, not just for the knowledge, but for the hope that comes with it. Before we move forward, I also want to thank you for being part of this conversation. If you find something helpful here, consider letting me know in the comments by typing 1. If there's something you disagree with or find unhelpful, type 0. Your feedback helps guide me in creating more valuable content. And if you haven't done so yet, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's walk through these 5 powerful lessons together, with a focus on preserving our health and preventing problems before they escalate. It might sound unusual for me to say this so directly, but I've come to believe that almost everything I was taught about a meat and potatoes lifestyle was incomplete. There's a catch hidden in that approach that many seniors don't realize until it's almost too late. Let me share with you my first lesson in a more direct way. I discovered that red meat was quietly making my joints ache far more than they needed to, and you might be in the same boat. I used to think that if I ate lean cuts of meat and trimmed off the fat, I was doing myself a favor. The big misconception here is that most of us believe red meat is an essential part of a protein-based diet. We think we'll lose muscle or energy if we cut back on it. But consider my neighbor Dorothy, who's 78. She was a farm girl, used to waking up before dawn and tending to animals. For years, she devoured bacon and sausage at breakfast without a second thought. When her knees started giving her trouble, she was told it was just age. But her age-related pain worsened so dramatically that she began limping every time she got up from her recliner. She finally paid attention when she realized that each morning, after a plateful of processed red meat, the ache in her knees felt like a steady throbbing that took hours to subside. Dorothy decided to do something drastic. At least it felt drastic to her. She swapped her morning bacon for oatmeal with mixed nuts. Within a month, she noticed her knees weren't screaming at her quite so loudly. A few months later, she was back to strolling through her garden without grimacing at every step. The reality is that red meat can contribute to inflammation, which in turn aggravates joint pain. The practical step here might be to gradually reduce how often you eat red meat. For instance, if you have it every day, cut down to twice a week. Replace it with fish, beans, or even a veggie scramble. The emotional benefit? There's a quiet joy in rising each morning without feeling like your body's on fire. Imagine the relief in being able to walk across the living room to answer the door or chase after your grandchildren without that nagging throb in your joints. That alone can give you a sense of freedom you might have lost. Now let's go deeper into the second lesson. I learned that red meat, particularly when eaten often, can create hidden gut issues that go unnoticed until they turn into serious health scares. Most people think digestive problems like constipation or irregular bowel movements are just part of getting older. But let's talk about Michael, who is 72. He spent much of his retirement golfing and enjoying life. A year ago, he started experiencing sharp, mysterious pains in his abdomen. After ignoring it for a while, he ended up in the emergency room with a diverticulitis flare-up. His doctor casually mentioned that high consumption of red meat might be aggravating his condition because of the added strain it can place on the digestive system. Michael had always believed the typical line, "A hearty diet keeps you strong." But strength is more than muscle. It also means having a healthy gut that can absorb nutrients and eliminate toxins properly. The surprising insight here is that some compounds in red meat, especially processed and heavily cooked varieties, can irritate the lining of the gut in certain individuals, increasing the risk of conditions like diverticulitis or even colon cancer. One piece of practical advice is to add fiber-rich foods like lentils, greens, or oatmeal alongside or instead of red meat to help your digestive system, and there's a clear emotional payoff. Knowing your bathroom trips won't be a dreadful, uncomfortable experience can grant you enormous peace of mind. It also allows you the confidence to travel, dine out, and enjoy your day without an anxious worry about stomach pains flaring up unexpectedly. If you're still with me, I'd love for you to type 2 in the comments below. It's a simple way of letting me know these insights are resonating. If you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you can stay in the loop every time we talk about important senior health tips. Your support means the world to me and allows this community to grow. My third lesson was one that absolutely shocked me because it turned a beloved aspect of my life on its head. I realized I was underestimating how portion sizes and frequency of red meat intake could undermine all the good habits I'd developed over the years. We often hear everything in moderation, and we assume that means a thick steak twice a week is perfectly fine. Yet the common misconception is that moderation is the same for everyone. It's not. For seniors, our bodies process and recover from foods differently than someone in their 20s or 30s. The unfortunate truth is that the same serving of meat can have a disproportionately negative impact on a 75-year-old compared to a 25-year-old. Let me give you a memorable phrase I live by now. Our portions should match our stage of life. Take a look at Esther, who's 76, a sweet lady from church whose brownies could tempt the most disciplined dieter. When she began to feel lethargic, she guessed her sugar consumption was the culprit. But her doctor pointed out something else. Esther was regularly enjoying 10 to 12 ounces of steak in a single meal. Her body, slowed by age, was struggling to break down all that animal protein. This led to a sluggish feeling and even contributed to her elevated cholesterol levels. She cut her red meat intake in half and started feeling more energized within weeks. A simple, actionable step here is to actually measure your servings. Instead of a massive steak that covers your plate, consider a 3 or 4 ounce piece, about the size of a deck of playing cards. Maybe fill the rest of the plate with grilled vegetables or a hearty salad. The emotional benefit? feeling more in control of your body. There's a tranquil sense of relief when you realize you're not forced to accept constant fatigue or heaviness just because you've hit a certain age. You can tweak your habits and regain a youthful bounce in your step. One of the most gratifying parts of making that switch was realizing I could still enjoy the taste of a good meal without feeling like I was punishing myself. I won't pretend it's easy to suddenly change what you've done for decades, but every small shift helps protect you from future struggles. When we talk about fear and prevention, portion control is a powerful tool that can save you a world of hurt down the road. The fourth lesson I learned was that discovering flavorful substitutes and food combinations can be an exciting adventure, not a miserable sacrifice. The bold statement here is that many seniors resist giving up or reducing red meat because they believe they'll be stuck eating bland, unsatisfying meals for the rest of their days. One of the biggest misconceptions is that vegetarian or even semi-vegetarian meals lack the substance needed to keep us satiated. I used to think that if I didn't have a slice of roast or a burger patty, the meal was incomplete. But the truth is, there are countless protein sources that can be just as filling and taste just as good, if not better. Let me introduce you to Carlos, who's 83 and used to love a juicy hamburger. After a heart scare, his doctor suggested a more plant-focused diet. Carlos was skeptical. He told me, I can't imagine giving up the one thing that makes me feel alive, my weekly burger. But he tried making a black bean and quinoa patty one day, seasoning it with onions, peppers, and spices he grew in his own garden. To his shock, it satisfied his craving for a hearty meal. Over time, he explored more meatless dishes, from lentil soups to tempeh tacos, and even found fish options like salmon or mackerel to be exceptionally tasty. The surprising insight is that once you open yourself to new foods, your palate can change. That meaty flavor you think only beef can offer can be matched or even surpassed with the right combination of seasonings and textures. A practical piece of advice: start small. Try swapping just one red meat meal a week with a fish dish, a plant-based burger, or a hearty lentil stew. Notice how you feel afterward. Many people report having more stable energy and a lighter, more comfortable digestion. There's an enormous emotional benefit in discovering you're not losing anything. Instead, you're gaining an exciting new range of tastes and possibilities. When you try something new, you tap into a sense of youthfulness, like the excitement we felt as children exploring new flavors. You might realize that changing your diet doesn't have to be a chore. It can be a gateway to feeling more alive than you have in years. If you've made it this far, please type 4 in the comments to let me know. I love seeing who's still here, absorbing these insights and considering a shift in their lifestyle. And if you haven't subscribed, this is the perfect time to do so. It ensures you never miss out on discussions that could change your health for the better. Now comes the fifth and final lesson, one that truly flips conventional wisdom on its head. I discovered that giving up red meat involved more than just the physical aspect of health. It forced me to confront the emotional connection I had to food. The bold statement is that for many of us, red meat represents comfort, tradition, and even identity. Letting go of it or reducing it can feel like part of ourselves is slipping away. The common misconception is that our diets only serve to fill our stomachs. In reality, our eating habits are tied to memories, cultural practices, and social events. This is especially true as we get older, when nostalgia can be a powerful force in our daily lives. Look at Richard, who's 79. Every Sunday, he would host a family gathering where he grilled steaks for his children and grandchildren. That weekly ritual was how he expressed love, sizzling meat on the fire, filling the air with the familiar aroma that signaled family time. When his doctor warned him about his high blood pressure and cholesterol, Richard reluctantly considered quitting red meat. But he dreaded losing those warm family moments. Here's the surprising truth. Richard realized he could preserve the tradition without the health risks by grilling alternatives like fish, chicken, and even veggie kebabs. He initially worried his family would miss the steaks, but they grew to appreciate the variety. More importantly, they still got together and shared laughter in the backyard every Sunday. The core of the tradition, love, togetherness, good conversation, remained intact. So a practical step for you might be to look at where red meat appears in your life. Is it part of a cherished ritual or a cultural tradition? Then explore how you can adapt that tradition. Maybe you shift to a leaner meat occasionally, or a fully plant-based option. The emotional benefit is enormous because you realize you're not betraying your family heritage or identity. Instead, you're evolving it to suit your body's needs at this stage of life. That realization can be profoundly liberating. Imagine enjoying a big family meal without later worrying about your blood pressure spiking or your digestion tying itself in knots. When I reflect on all 5 lessons, how red meat can silently worsen joint pain, contribute to hidden gut issues, demand careful portion control, open the door to surprisingly delicious alternatives, and reveal the emotional bonds we have with food, I see a clear path that might prevent a great deal of suffering in later life. But knowledge itself is not enough. We must act on it. We have a limited window to preserve our health. The earlier we address these hidden dangers, the better chance we have at staying mobile, independent, and joyful well into our 80s and beyond. I'd like you to pause for a moment and picture yourself a year from now. Imagine your body feeling lighter, your energy brighter, and your mind more at ease because you're not weighed down by constant joint aches or the fear of unpredictable health issues. Think of yourself looking forward to a day out with friends or family, confident that your food choices won't come back to haunt you with pain or fatigue. That future is absolutely within reach, but you have to start implementing some of these changes now. If you wait until the problems become unbearable, you might lose the valuable time you still have to make a meaningful difference. Which of these 5 lessons resonated the most with you? Perhaps you realize you've been eating larger portions than your body can handle. Maybe you're considering testing out a meat-free meal once a week, or you might be thinking about how to preserve family traditions without relying solely on red meat. Whatever it is, pick one small step you can take today. If you normally cook with a pound of ground beef, try mixing in lentils or mushrooms to reduce how much meat you actually consume. If you tend to grill steaks for every family gathering, experiment with fish or a savory veggie dish to see how it feels. Change doesn't have to happen overnight. It can be gradual, steady, and sustainable. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know if you've ever thought about cutting back on red meat, or if there's a particular concern that's been holding you back. Your experiences might just inspire someone else to take that crucial first step. Also, if you found value in what we discussed, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Sharing this video with friends or loved ones who might benefit is another wonderful way to support this community. Every interaction, whether it's a comment, a like, or a share, helps amplify the conversation and reach those who need a gentle nudge to prioritize their health. There's one last thing I want to leave you with. A reminder that no matter your age, you possess the power to rewrite your health story. We might have been told that after 65 or 70, it's too late to make a difference. That is a myth. I'm living proof that even at 80, you can make choices that drastically improve your well-being. Your body is astonishingly resilient and can respond positively to better habits. Don't underestimate your capacity to adapt and thrive, even after decades of doing things a certain way. So here's to embracing change with courage. Here's to challenging the old belief that we must accept every ache and pain as inevitable. And here's to building a future where you can move freely, live fully, and inspire others by your example. I appreciate you spending this time with me and considering these 5 lessons. By choosing to address these issues now, you're not just preventing health problems. You're opening the door to a richer, more enjoyable chapter of life. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I can't wait to hear how these insights might transform your days ahead. Now, to wrap everything up, I want to make it clear that giving up or drastically reducing red meat might sound overwhelming at first. But if you look at the long-term gains, less joint pain, better digestion, steady energy, and a sense of control over your health, it becomes a sacrifice well worth making. Consider it a gift to yourself and your loved ones. After all, the more we take care of ourselves, the more we can share those precious moments with the people we care about most. Remember, you always have a choice, and the choices you make today can alter the path of your future. Thank you so much for watching. If you feel inspired, share in the comments one thing you learned today and how you might apply it. Whether that means reducing your portion size, trying a new plant-based recipe, or reevaluating the emotional bonds you have with your favorite meals, Every step counts. Your journey can encourage someone else who's facing the same challenges. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And if you know someone who could benefit from hearing about these lessons, feel free to share this with them as well. Together, we can support each other toward a healthier, more vibrant life. I look forward to seeing you in the next video and continuing this conversation. Until then, remember, your choices matter, and there's always time to make a change for the better.